I'm going to call this meeting to order. For all that care to, please stand for an opening prayer and pledge of allegiance. Let us pray. In a world filled with chaos, we seek your peace for our city. Grant our leaders wisdom and compassion as they guide us through the challenges and opportunities. May we come together in love, support, and discussion, creating a safe and caring community for all. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So thank you everyone for being here this evening. We are going to start out this evening with a proclamation for our veterans. Before I begin, I do have a quick question. Would all of the veterans in attendance, would they mind raising their hand if we have any? We've got one in attendance, and then we have, how many council members here are veterans? We've got 1, 2, 3, and the mayor. So that's 4 or 5 of us here tonight. So thank you for being here. Proclamation for Veterans Day. Whereas Veterans Day has become a significant part of our American heritage, and as we recognize the millions of patriots who have served on our behalf, and whereas on Veterans Day, November the 11th, we honor the brave men and women who have served our nation with unwavering courage and dedication, and whereas veterans have made immense sacrifices, they have given pieces of their lives, times away from their family and personal dreams, and sometimes their very own health. Veterans and their commitment to duty, honor, and country is a testament to the strength and resilience of our republic. And whereas, let us reflect on the countless stories of valor and sacrifice that fill our history and recognize that our liberties are upheld by the service of veterans. We are forever indebted to those who have stood ready to defend and serve without fear so that we may live in peace. And whereas, we thank our veterans for their service to our nation. Your bravery has forged the trails of freedoms that we walk today, and your legacy will inspire future generations to uphold the values of courage and commitment. And whereas, as a community, let us celebrate Veterans Day and continue to support our veterans, ensuring that they receive the respect, care, and recognition that they deserve. Together, we honor their contributions, their sacrifice, their service, and together we strive to make Republic a peaceful place for them. Now therefore, I, Eric Franklin, Mayor of the City of Republic in the state of Missouri, do hereby call upon citizens of Republic and recognizing America's veterans and observe November the 11th, 2024 as Veterans Day, and ask that we all take a moment to honor their service. And Veterans Day, and testimony whereof I hereunto have set my hand and affixed the seal of the City of Republic this 5th day of November, 2024. And if I have the veterans, if you would care to come up front here real quick.
Let's all not rush at once.
If you're a council member, it's a requirement. Unless Gary, he's done this enough times. It's up to you. I've got pictures that go all the way back to Jeff Ussery when director of Veterans Day proclamations.
Really?
There's been a lot of us over the years, veterans on council.
Gary, I'll get out of your way.
We'd love to have you up here.
Just getting out of the picture.
I'm standing over here.
Works for me.
I know you would.
Yeah.
Great.
It's cool off in a hurry.
Anyone that would like a copy of that, please let me know, and we can make sure that you do get a copy of that. So very grateful for our veterans and their contributions here in Republic. So thank you very much. Moving on, we're moving on to our citizens' participation. At this time, I'm going to open citizens' participation. Anyone wishing to speak on anything that is not on the agenda, please come forward. Seeing that there are none, I'm going to go ahead and close citizens' participation. Moving on to the consent agenda, I need a motion. Does council have any questions or comments about items number 2 through 5 on the consent agenda? Seeing that there is none, I now need a motion and a second for the approval of the consent agenda.
Motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Board, commission, and committee schedules. We've got the Board of Adjustment meeting on November the 7th, 2024 has been canceled. City Council workshop, November the 12th, 2024 at 5 o'clock. That'll be here. City Council special session, November the 12th, 2024 at 6 o'clock, also here. City Council meeting on November the 19th, 2024. Planning and Zoning meeting on December the 2nd, 2024. And the Board of Adjustment meeting, December 5th, 2024 has been canceled. And we also have a City Council meeting, December the 10th, 2024. So we will be very busy. Moving on to old business and tabled items. I now need a motion and a second for the second reading of Bill 24-60 by title only, please.
Motion. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title.
An ordinance of the City Council approving amendment of the zoning code and official map by changing the classification of approximately 28.88 acres of property located at the 7200 block of West Farm Road 170 from Kirkwood Estates Plan Development District, PDD 23005, to Kirkwood Estates Plan Development District, PDD 24003.
Thank you, Laura. Do we have any questions or discussion from council before moving on to final passage? Seeing there is none, I now need a motion and a second for the final passage of Bill 24-60, please.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Now going to take a roll call vote on our computer. Motion carries 7-0. Moving on to item number 7. I need a motion and a second for the second reading of Bill 24-61 by title only, please.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council approving amendment of the zoning classification of 3.10 acres of real property located at 3155 East Sawyer Road from Clips Event Center Plan Development District, PDD, to Light Industrial M1.
Thank you, Laura. Does council have any questions or discussion before moving on to final passage? Seeing there is none, I now need a motion and a second for the final passage of Bill 24-61, please.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. We're now going to take a roll call vote. Motion carries 7-0. Moving on to item number 8. I need a motion and a second for the second reading of Bill 24-62 by title only, please.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Laura will read that ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council amending Title IV, Land Use, Article 405-2, Destination of Districts and General District Regulations, Chapter 405, Zoning Regulations, Section 405.030, Districts Enumerated, Article 405-3, Zoning Districts, Use and Regulations, Section 405.148, MSD, Main Street District, Article 405-4, height and area requirements, exceptions, and modifications, Section 405.540, height and area regulations established, chart, and 405.545, height and area exceptions and conditions, Article 405.6, off-street parking and loading requirements, Section 405.570, generally, Article 405.7, additional district provisions, Section 405.620, exterior lighting standards, Article 405.10, landscaping and screening, Sections 405.750, applicability, 405.770, landscaped area requirements, and 405.810, screening requirements of the Municipal Code of the City of Republic, Missouri.
Thank you, Laura. Definitely a long one on that. Good practice, though. Does council have any questions or discussion on that very long ordinance? Seeing
Read
that,
it again.
well, if the council would like to volunteer. Seeing that there is none, I now need a motion and a second for final passage of Bill 24-62, please.
Motion. Second.
Third.
Got a motion and a second. We're now going to take a roll call vote. Motion carries 7-0-0. Moving on to item number 9. It has become aware to me that there will be a request to table this item. And so if we can get a motion and a second from council to table this item, we can.
Motion.
We have Karen Haynes here tonight to answer any questions on moving forward.
Yes, and I'll provide just a brief update. The developer recently closed on the properties, which were included in the CID district. State statute does require additional notice of the amended petition, also to be mailed to the affected property owners, both which will occur this week. We are anticipating those two items to have been completed with an official request to bring this back before you for a decision on November 19th. I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Does anyone have any questions for Karen? Seeing that there is none, I would now entertain a motion and a second from council on tabling Bill 24-63, or Ordinance 24-63.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. We're going to do a simple voice vote on this one. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0-0. Moving on to motion tabled 7-0-0. Thank you. Moving on to new business, first reading of ordinances. We have item number 10, a public hearing of the City Council regarding appropriating from the revenue of the City of Republic, Missouri expenditures in accordance with the fiscal year 2025 budget of the City of Republic, Missouri, and providing for adjustments thereto. I'm going to go ahead and open our public hearing. If anyone is here to speak on this, go ahead and come forward, and you've got 3 minutes. Seeing that there is none, we will go ahead and close our public hearing. Move on to item number 11, 24-64. I need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 24-64 by title only, please.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstention? Motion carries 7-0-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council appropriating from the revenue of the City of Republic, Missouri expenditures in accordance with the fiscal year 2025 budget of the City of Republic, Missouri, and providing for adjustments thereto.
Thank you, Laura. We've got Mr. Ford here this evening.
Good evening, Bob Ford, Chief Financial Officer. As a follow-on to our budget workshop of last week, I'd like to hit some high points this evening, answer any questions, given that this is the first read. You'll recall from our discussion last week that from an operating perspective, we're currently showing and budgeting revenues for fiscal 25 at external revenues at 32 $8.1 million. We're also budgeting revenues that are internal, which are the internal transfers between funds, which wash on the expense side of about $4 million. So at the end of the day, we're talking about an operating surplus of $4.5 million for the city on a consolidated basis. Also on the capital side, capital budget, we're forecasting and budgeting $53.4 million of CapEx. That CapEx will be funded from three sources. One, cash from the balance sheet of about $25.6 million, grants and other reimbursements of $26.6, and other sources of $175,000, and the CIST sales tax revenue of a little over $1 million. If you look at the capital uses and capital sources, that nets to a positive surplus of about $25,000. So if you take the operating surplus of $4.5 million and add that small amount of capital surplus, we end up showing a consolidated net surplus for fiscal 25 on a budgeted basis of $4.5 million. Just to bring you over to the left-hand side of this schedule, once again, just to remind you, of the $53.4 million that we're talking about in terms of the total capital spend for next year, $40.5 million of that is the wastewater project. So once again, we've spent about $45 million on the wastewater project to date. Next year, we'll spend about 40. The following year, we'll spend the residual amount, which will get us up to about $145 million, give or take. Additionally, on the CapEx side, there's a number of other projects. We've highlighted the larger ones that are identified on the left-hand side. Once again, we've identified how we're going to fund those capital needs. Those capital needs are coming from cash, grants, and other sources. Additionally, in 25, we will pay off the Series 2017 debt as well as the fire truck. That'll free up about $300,000 in debt service on a consolidated basis. But because we're spending our cash from our balance sheet to fund our capital needs next year, you'll see our cash balance drop from about $32 million down to about 16. If we drill down a little deeper on the operating budget from a revenue perspective, just to remind you that about 39% of our revenue comes from city sales taxes. Other sales taxes, such as the law enforcement sales tax and the parks sales tax from Greene County, make up another 9.5%. Property taxes are important, but they're a kind of a distant third here at 6.5% of our total tax revenue bucket. Moving down to the other revenue side, which is really the business side of the city, the utility billing makes up $9.2 million of our budgeted revenue for next year. Remember that we've budgeted about a 25% increase in water rates because of the capital needs that we'll talk about in the capital improvement plan later on. But primarily, we're talking about two significant needs for the water fund. One, an additional water tower sometime over the next 3 years, and two, an upgrade to our meter collection process. And we're moving to a fully automated process in which the Itron data will feed directly into the new ERP system, i.e. Project Genesis, that we've talked about a number of times. Once again, it'll mechanize and automate a lot of these processes that are currently happening in the city that are currently manual. Once again, net, we get back to a $32 million external revenue number, as we talked about on page 1. Moving on to the operating budget expense side, personnel expenses still remain our largest expenditure for the city. 60% of our total operating expenses come on the personnel side. Operating expenses of about $5.7 million. Operating expenses of about $5.7 million represent about 21% of our total operating expense needs for the city. we have some departmental expenses. We break these out only because operating expenses are common across all funds and all departments. So paper clips in the police department get budgeted and accounted for in the same paperclip account as the water and wastewater. But police and fire have some very specific needs, so we capture some of that activity as a departmental specific expense. That represents about 3% of the overall total expense budget. Once again, coming down to debt service, with the increase in the SRF debt that we expect to start drawing on that line next year, and we'll totally draw on the full $50 million in 2026. Debt service is obviously creeping up. Even though we're paying down the 2017 and the fire truck, that's being offset by the fact that we're needing to draw on the SRF debt in order to finalize and finish the wastewater project. The only thing I would like to highlight here on the personnel side is on the retirement benefits. As you know, we've agreed to upgrade our defined pension plan from the L6 to L3 to L6. This increases the employee benefit on a monthly basis as they, from a retirement perspective, by about 60%. Simultaneously with that change, we're going to change the way we do our 457 plan. And historically, what we've done is the city has contributed 9% on behalf of the employees of their compensation and not required a contribution from the employee. The 457 plan will change, and we will require a contribution from the employee, and we will match dollar for dollar up to the first 4% of deferral made by the employee. Net, as we've talked about historically, this change in L6 from L3 to L6 and the change in the 457 plan, net will cost the city about $450,000 a year. Moving on to the capital side, I'm not going to go through this chart only because we've talked about the big capital projects, and this chart once again is just showing by fund the capital expenditures that we are currently budgeting for 25 and how we're going to fund those. And so, for instance, the general fund, we're budgeting an expansion of the Bills building for the administrative wing of the Bills building at $4.5 million. That's going to be funded by cash. We currently have that cash on our balance sheet, currently sitting in a CD. Once again, the highlights here are wastewater is the lion's share of our capital program for next year. We're going to spend $40.5 million on the next tranche or the next phase of our wastewater expansion and improvement project. You recall that we've talked about up until last year, the capital improvement plan was a separate process. It's now been integrated into our budgeting process. This 5-year capital improvement plan is important from the perspective that year 25, the first year of the capital improvement plan, is in fact our capital budget for 25. The two are now in sync. Secondarily, the capital improvement plan, I'm just going to highlight the water fund. If you look at 26, 27, and 28, you'll see about a need for the water fund of about $11 million. This is the water tower that I referred to once again, and how we're going to fund that is we will fund that water tower through increased rates as opposed to borrowing additional debt as we had to do with the wastewater plant. So once again, the goal here is to start building cash reserves to fund these capital needs in the future as opposed to needing to go back to the debt market. This is the debt summary. I've identified the debt summary. Once again, it shows where we currently stand in terms of outstanding balances for each tranche of our debt program. It shows the principal payment that's going to be made in 25 and the resulting debt balance at the end of 25. Once again, just to remind you, we're paying down 2017 debt, we're paying off a fire truck, but incrementally, we're drawing on the SRF debt to the tune of about $10 million. So even though we are seeing a savings on the debt service with regards to the fire truck and the Series 27 debt, Series 2017 debt, we will now start to see an incremental debt service requirement on the SRF debt. Last but not least, I just want to leave this. We've talked about 25 debt and 25 debt service, but what does it look like beyond 25? And the importance here, I think, of this chart is just to show the magnitude of the cash flow obligations that we have over the upcoming years with regards to the amortization of our debt service. So for instance, our Series 23 debt, which we use to fund the Rush and the J.R. Martin expansion, we still have $14.9 million in debt service on a cumulative basis to make good on over the in the coming years. The last two columns have identified the wastewater treatment plant project. Remember that when we borrowed on the Series 22 debt, part of that money went to build the Bills building. The lion's share of it went to fund the wastewater treatment plant. So I've actually broken that debt into those two components. So from a Bills building perspective, you can see that in the third column from the right, there's still $7 million of debt service, so principal and interest to be paid over the next coming years to fund and pay off that debt relative to the Bills building. But if you look at the wastewater treatment plant, the Series 22 debt plus the SRF debt, we have $115 million of debt service over the next coming years. So once again, I think this underscores our need to build cash for future capital projects as opposed to going back to the debt market. So this concludes the overview of the operating and capital budgets for 25, and obviously staff is recommending approval. Any questions at this time? I'm happy to answer.
Mr. Ford, I've got a question for you. So, and I'm just a clarification. So the Bills building that's up here on the Series 2022, that's the original, the Bills building, what's there now?
That is correct.
Okay. That was all the clarification I needed.
That is correct.
Do we have any questions from council? Let's see, since we have no questions, make sure that we get with staff if we have any questions before the next read. Do we have any citizens that are here this evening to speak on this matter? Do we have speaker cards up there? Do we have any speaker cards? Seeing that there are none, make sure that we get to staff if you have any questions before our next reading. Moving on to item number 12. I need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 24-65 by title only, please.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council amending Title 8 Fees, Chapter 805, Fee Schedule, Section 805.050, Buildings and Zoning, Section 805.080, Parks and Recreation Fees, and Section 805.100, Utility Administration of the Municipal Code of the City of Republic, Missouri.
Thank you, Laura. And we have kind of a two-tier deal here. So I've got in my notes that we've got Ms. Haynes for questions on half of it and Mr. Parks for questions on the other half. So we'll we have Ms. Haynes here this evening to give us an overview on the entire thing.
Thank you. Karen Haynes, Community Development Director. As part of our annual budget review process, we are requesting a citywide fee amendment to our fee schedule ordinance. Community development staff have updated the fee sheet as it relates to Title IV land use and also Title V building and construction to more accurately reflect the cost of materials and labor expended by the city and the development of projects. Notably, some building permit fees were raised. In all cases, this change was made to better encompass the number of inspections required to close out a given building permit. The cost of construction permitting was also raised. In this instance, fees are directly related to the installation and later dedication of new water, sewer, and stormwater components, and also road and sidewalk components of major development projects. Fees are collected to assist in offsetting some of these costs for maintaining this type of infrastructure. To be most effective, these fees must be commensurate with increases for the cost of materials and equipment used on these projects. The fees relating to the installation and purchasing of water meters has also been updated to reflect the new cost of water meters to the city and also the labor and materials involved in these installations. On the Parks side, the Parks Department reviews all its fees for all programs, events, and facilities on a yearly basis. Through this process, we look at area trends, staffing costs, and operating costs, amongst other factors. After reviewing fees for 2025, some increases were made in the areas of athletics, aquatics, and community programs. These increases are a direct response of a continued increase in commodity and also operating costs, as well as an increase in staffing costs to remain competitive. Both Chris Parks and I are available to answer any questions that you might have regarding our respective areas. We are recommending approval.
Thank you, Ms. Haynes. Do we have any questions from council, either for Parks or for any other of the four?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Campbell.
are these fees for building permits? Is that what I understood?
Yes, so
Okay.
from the Community Development Department perspective, we do building permit fees and also the infrastructure permit fees for the development of major development projects that contain new water, sewer, stormwater, road, and sidewalk components.
And do we have an amount that is increasing?
Yes, listed in the individual sections of the ordinance, we have several that are increasing, including grading permit fees, several water and sewer inspection fees. Also, we increased accessory structures from $20 typically to about $25. And you'll see those highlighted in the actual ordinance. The major changes for the builds department are really related to the increased costs of water meters and then the installation time, materials and equipment it takes to install those water meters.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Do we have any additional questions from council? Seeing that there are none, do we have any citizens here this evening to speak on this ordinance? Seeing that there are none, thank you, Ms. Haynes, and for council, make sure that you get with staff if you have any additional questions before the next read. Moving on to item number 13, 24-66. I need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 24-66 by title only, please.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council approving amendment of the zoning classification of approximately .71 acres of real property located at 213, 217, and 221 North Main Street from a non-designated zoning district to Main Street District, MSD.
Thank you, Laura. And we've got Mr. Ruiz here this evening to give us an overview.
Good evening, Patrick Ruiz, Associate Planner. Prior to going into the details of this specific rezone, I wanted to give like a general background of the 4 rezones that the city is applying for within the downtown area. So the ordinance amendments regarding the Main Street District that was presented in last City Council meeting and was just approved through Agenda Item 8 are the foundation for today's rezone applications, as it provides a zoning designation for the Main Street area that accommodates mixed-use land uses and preserves the physical characteristics uniquely found in the downtown area. So that's kind of the point of providing these rezone applications on behalf of the city to be proactive with the Main Street District that was approved today. So going on with that, the City of Republic has applied to rezone approximately .71 acres of property located at 213, 217, and 221 North Main Street. That includes 4 parcels of land that does not have a zoning designation to Main Street District. This property is currently the site of vacant land, a vacant building, and the Pocket Park. The vacant building was the previous site of City Hall, and the vacant parcel to the north was the previous site of the Public Works Building. The subject property fronts the Main Street corridor with neighboring parcels of land zoned local commercial to the south and east across Main Street, general commercial C3 to the east across Main Street, and medium density single family residential to the north across Olive Street. It is also next to a non-designated and medium density single family residential zone property to the west. The land uses of these adjacent properties are either vacant lots, commercial, or religious institutions in nature. Staff considers the proposed zoning amendment to be generally consistent with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan, consistent with the trend of development in the vicinity of the site, and compatible with surrounding land uses and able to be adequately served by municipal facilities. Based on this information, staff recommends approval of this application.
Thank you, Mr. Ruiz. Do we have any questions or comments from council? Seeing that there are none, do we have any citizens here this evening to speak on this one? Seeing that there are none, if we have any additional questions, please make sure to get with Mr. Ruiz before our next council meeting. Item number 14, I need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 24-67 by title only, please.
Motion.
Second.
All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council approving amendment of the zoning classification of approximately .54 acres of real property located at 210 North Walnut Avenue and the 200 block of North Walnut Avenue from medium-density single-family residential, R1M, and non-designated zoning district to Main Street District, MSD.
Thank you, Laura. And we've got Mr. Ruiz here to give us an overview.
So this is the second one within the downtown area. It's just west of the one that we just talked about. So the City of Republic has applied to rezone approximately 0.54 acres of property located at the 200 block of North Walnut Avenue and 210 North Walnut Avenue, which includes two parcels of land to the Main Street District. One of them is medium density single family residential, and the other one does not have a zoning designation. The property is currently the site of vacant land and a facility maintenance office storage building. The vacant parcel at the 200 block of North Walnut Avenue was previously used as the site of for parking and storage of city vehicles and equipment. And then 210 North Walnut Avenue is the site of the aforementioned office storage building. The subject property fronts Walnut Avenue in close proximity to the Main Street corridor, with neighboring parcels of land zoned local commercial to the south, medium density single family residential and two family residential to the west across Walnut Avenue, and medium density single family residential to the north across Olive Street. The subject property is located within the defined Republic boundaries as stated in the ones that we just amended. So staff considers the proposed zoning amendment to be generally consistent with the goals and objectives to the comprehensive plan, consistent with the trend of development in the vicinity of the site, compatible with the surrounding land uses, and able to be adequately served by municipal facilities. Based on this information, staff recommends approval of this application.
Thank you, Mr. Ruiz. Do we have any questions or comments from council? Seeing there is none, do we have any citizens commenting on this one this evening? Seeing that there is none, remember, if we have any questions, make sure that you get with staff before the second read. Moving on to item number 15. I need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 24-68 by title only, please.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council approving amendment of the zoning classification of approximately .2 acres of real property located at the 200 block of North Main Street from local commercial C1 to Main Street District MSD.
Thank you, Laura. And we've got Mr. Ruiz here.
All right, moving on to the other side of Main Street, the City of Republic has applied to rezone approximately .20 acres of property located at the 200 block of North Main Street from local commercial to Main Street District. The property is currently the site of a public parking lot. The property fronts the Main Street corridor with neighboring parcels of land zoned local commercial to the north and south, and parcels without zoning designation to the west across Main Street. It is also next to two family residential zone properties to the east. The land uses of the adjacent properties facing the Main Street corridor are either vacant lots, commercial or religious institutions in nature, while the land use of the properties behind the subject property are residential. Staff considers the proposed zoning amendment to be generally consistent with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan, consistent with the trend of development in the vicinity of the site, compatible with the surrounding land uses, and able to be adequately served by municipal facilities. Based on this information, staff also recommends approval of this application.
Excellent work. Thank you,
Thank
Mr. Ruiz. Any questions or comments from council? Seeing that there is none, do we have any citizens here this evening to comment on this particular one? Seeing that there is none, make sure that you get with staff if you have any questions before our next read. And I think this is the fourth and final. Number 16, I need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 24-69 by title only, please.
Motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council approving amendment of the zoning classification of approximately .18 acres of real property located at 204 North Main Street and 103 East Grant Street from local commercial C1 to Main Street District MSD.
Thank you, Laura. We have Mr. Ruiz.
All right, last but not least, the fourth one, the City of Republic has applied to rezone approximately .1 acres of property located at 204 North Main Street and 103 East Grand Street from local commercial C1 to Main Street District. The property is currently the site of a vacant office building that was previously the location for administrative office space for the city. 103 East Grant Street is currently a vacant parcel, whereas 204 North Main Street is the site of the aforementioned office building. The property fronts the Main Street corridor with neighboring parcels of land zoned local commercial C1 to the north, east, and south across Grant Street and west across Main Street. The land uses of the adjacent properties facing the Main Street corridor are commercial in nature, while the land uses of the properties behind the subject property is residential, even though it is zoned commercial. Staff considers the proposed zoning amendment to be generally consistent with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan, consistent with the trend of development in the vicinity of the site, compatible with surrounding land uses, and able to be adequately served by municipal facilities. Based on this information, staff recommends approval of this application.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments from council on this rezone? Seeing that there is none, do we have any comments from citizens on this rezone? Seeing that there is none, make sure you get with staff before the next read if you have any questions. Thank you, Mr. Ruiz. Item number 17, I need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 24-70 by title only, please.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion, a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council approving amendment of the zoning classification of approximately 9.93 acres of real property located at 501 West Brookfield Avenue from general commercial C2 to multifamily residential R3.
Thank you, Laura. And we've got Mr. Tabor here this evening to give us an overview.
Good evening, Chris Tabor, Principal Planner. The applicant is requesting the rezone of .98 acres from general commercial C2 to multifamily residential R3. The property is a vacant, unimproved parcel located at 501 West Brookfield. The public hearing for this item was held last night and saw no public opposition, nor did staff receive any calls concerning this item. The subject is adjacent to the following zoning districts. To the north and east across Brookfield Street, multifamily residential R3, which is the site of a permitted new multifamily residential construction of townhomes. To the south across State Highway 174, medium density single family residential R1M, the site of West Side Christian Church. And to the west, general commercial C2 vacant and light industrial M1, which is the site of Ben Barn and formerly the site of Irwin Printing. Staff believes this rezone will be harmonious with the surrounding uses. Both water and wastewater are present on the site, and the city does have capacity to serve the site. Access to the site would come from a drive off of Brookfield Street. There is some floodplain presence on the site. Development would require compliance with the city's floodplain standards. There are no sinkholes present. Staff considers this zoning map amendment to be consistent with the city's adopted plans and ordinances, and we are recommending approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tabor. Do we have any questions or comments from council?
One question, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Neal?
Is this the same people that are building the current townhomes, or is this a different applicant?
It is the same applicant.
Thank you.
Any additional questions from council? Seeing that there is none, do we have any citizens here this evening to comment on this ordinance? Seeing that there is none, as a reminder, this is an ordinance, so if you have any questions, make sure that you get with staff before our next reading. Moving on to reports from staff. Ms. Addington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bob, again, great job on the budget. This is the first time we had the budget so far in advance, and I know you were taking a 3-week leave, so great job to you and your staff. Wanted to also mention a street closure permit that was issued to Environmental Works for an intermittent street closure on Maple Avenue near Elm Street. They will be installing an additional monitoring well associated with the Superfund site on Main. We did receive several calls on this yesterday, so hopefully this will provide some additional clarity. MoDOT will be working on crosswalks on Main south of US Highway 60. This will continue over the next couple of weeks. And just for clarity, the November 19th council meeting will be held here at Municipal Court. This will allow for the additional AV setup and testing to occur at Builds. The December 10th meeting will be held at Builds. That's the plan. And happy Election Day. Hopefully everyone got out to vote at some point today. With that, we also wanted to mention election signups will begin December 10th at 8 o'clock at the Builds Building, with 4 council seats open for a 1-year term. Anyone signing up after December 10th will need to call or email for an appointment, and the filing period closes December 31st. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Addington. Do we have any reports from council?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Campbell?
I would just like to, again, point out Mr. Bob Ford and his team and the workshop that we had a week ago tonight. I know there's a lot of information in there that due to time you can't go over everything in a setting like this. So having those workshops and everyone being involved with those just shows that how much investment we're putting into this. But thank you for your time and your team. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Anyone else on council? Seeing that there is none, I'll get to go last. Again, echo what Ms. Addington said. Thank you to everyone that got out to vote today. I was made aware of a little bit of an issue over at the senior center with parking, and so I did make a call down to the Greene County Clerk's office this afternoon, just in making sure that they were aware of that issue. So moving forward, who knows if we'll have that much excitement again in the election, but it's kind of a anomaly. But thank you to the clerk's office for taking my call, and for everyone that trooped through that, whether it was mud, water, whatever you had to do in the rain today to vote. Thank you very much. Thank you to Mr. Ford, Mr. Jones, Mr. Sims, and Mr. Cameron for that budget and that presentation. That was a lot of information, and you're right, Mr. Campbell. That's just so much information for the year that it's great to have that extra opportunity to get all of that in our heads so that we can share that with constituents. And so thank you very much. I would like to echo once again, thanks to all of the veterans in our community. We really appreciate your contributions to Republic. Thank you to Lisa tonight for everything that you've done for us and filling in for Mr. Cameron. And thank you to our council for all of your hard work on these last few weeks. I know as I'm going down through this schedule, it seems like it's every week we have a meeting. So I really hope that the citizens appreciate that, and the hard work from everyone here on council, the hard work from our city staff on preparing all of this information for us, and the hard work of the citizens and keeping us in check. But other than that, I would like to thank everyone for